Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is inspect this Vanos pump. Actually, not a Vanos pump. Inspect this primary pump. So this is the oil pump that I pulled off of the V10 that was very exploded. It's yucky. I'm gonna get some gloves before it's too late. I don't know if you can see that, but that's metal. No surprise, you know, because connecting rod looked like this. So, yeah. And it looks relatively clean. The other pump inlet, yeah, not so clean. It's not so clean. Big chunks. So, let's get this apart and see what it all looks like. Not too much yuck inside there, but a little bit. Comes from the opposite side. This will take it off. And that's that bolt there. And the rest of these. This most likely has the spring in it, judging by its, you know, spring shape. I'm kind of holding this with my thumb right now to make it not fly up. At least I think I am. Okay, so here's the cover. Looks pretty good. There's the big old spring for the variable adjustment dude. It's just disgusting. This frickin' 60 weight Castrol, whatever oil it is unpleasant to be around, I must say. It's got a lot of suckiness on there. Nothing looks, I mean, there's definitely stuff in the oil that isn't supposed to be in the oil, but as far as the G-rotor goes, nothing terrible looking so far. Interesting. Yeah, this doesn't look ruined or anything. Definitely had some debris go through it, but nothing that I would consider horrible. And now that we got that suction device out of there, it's leaking again. Okay, so I think we got to get this keyway out of there. Standard issue from 1930s-ish. It's weird that they put the dowel pins here and here. Usually you want to make those as far away as possible so you get a bigger. I could have put it over here and over here. What do I know? Just a lowly engineer. Okay. Let's that drain a bit and think about what it's done. It's making all the right noises. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go over to the solvent tank and clean all this stuff up. All right, so I got some of these parts cleaned up, but I didn't have this guy. So went back to the shed and got this guy. And this one's a little yuckier. Get this cleaned up too, but yeah, that's the metal debris, kind of big chunks in there. And this thing's all beat to shit because the rod crashed into it. Well, maybe not the rod, but just in pieces. Anyway, we'll get this. This is all part of the puzzle, so get that cleaned up. Any idea why I want to put the compressor outside? I can't think of any. Okay, so I got this stuff all cleaned up. I have to do some straightening on that. And I scienced out how everything works on this. So see, where do I start? I guess I'll start at the inlet and work to the outlet, right? So there are two of those, it turns out. So this goes like this, and this goes like this. So this is like kind of a complete pump looking thing. And it bolts on the bottom of the motor like that. So in the car, it's right side up like this. Front of the car that way. So let's do this in the right side up orientation, I guess, because why not? So this goes on there like that. And this is at the back of the sump. And then this is the front pickup, which goes on over here. Right here. And that goes to the front sump. So the way this works, and I'm not defending it, I'm just explaining it. Trying not to get these dowel pins completely in there. So, pickups oil at the rear sump, goes through this tube, goes into here. Now that leads to the variable displacement pump, which is a vane style pump. That's the rotor there. And then that supplies oil through this port to not necessarily the motor, but it comes out of the motor, and then it goes to the kind of the housing for the oil filter and stuff, cooler and all that junk. So it comes out of this port right here. So there's a little elbow on the motor, goes over to the little thingy on the passenger right corner of the car, and then it comes back in. When it comes back in, it communicates with this port right here, which I'll show a little later what that's for. So that's the oiling system for this line here. Now for this one, which is the front sump, goes here. And if you don't know already, there's the oil pan kind of has a front sump and then a big rear sump like that. And so this one's in the front sump, and there's no communication from this sump to this sump because there's an oil, or there's a power steering rack in between there. So the only purpose of this pump, this gigantic G-rotor pump, is to suck oil from the front sump and spit it back through this hose here and dump it into the rear sump. So this gigantic pump, sole purpose in life is to take oil from the front sump, put it in the rear sump. And you're probably wondering, well, why is that so freaking big? Like that's a huge pump. That's bigger than a small block Chevy pump that does everything. Well, the reason for that is there's a lot of oil in this thing, and if you're in a scenario at threshold braking, all that oil is going to transfer to the front, either by this pickup or just by sloshing. And there are a lot of baffles in the pan and stuff, but if you have a sustained high G load stopping, this pump needs to get the oil back to the main, right? Because that's the only thing that supplies oil pressure to the engine. So if this loses submersion into the oil level, then you got no oil pressure, and that's super bad. So, I was a little bit confused when I first took this apart, because usually when you have a G-rotor pump like this, there's a bypass valve. There's a spring and a ball, and as soon as it gets to some certain pressure, it blows off, and that regulates the pressure. This one has no such thing, and the reason for that is it doesn't have any pressure, right? It's just pumping at whatever restriction this hose is, which isn't much, right? Maybe, I don't know, quarter of PSI or something, right? It's literally not making pressure. It's just a pumping air and oil, right? Because this one is not necessarily always going to have oil to it, right? If you're accelerating, this sump is going to evacuate itself and then not have any oil to pump after a few seconds of that. So that's why this pump isn't really that important. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't make any pressure. It doesn't take much power because it's really just pumping oil at no pressure or very little pressure. Just a moving device, not a pressurizing device. So let's get into what the rest of this pump looks like. So this spring which sits inside this cover like that there. And its sole purpose is to put force on this wedge thing here, which interfaces with this as it moves down. And then that pivots and changes the volumetric displacement of this. Like every revolution, depending on where this is rotated, it moves the rotor and the stator, or the inside and the outside vane pump relative to the center, and that changes displacement. So essentially what happens is, as soon as you reach a threshold oil pressure, this spring is pushed by the oil pressure acts on this side of this wedge. That's like a piston in the cylinder, and it pushes and compresses the spring. And as it does that, it changes the rotation of this, which changes the displacement. So it's a self-balancing situation, right? As soon as the pressure gets high, the volume goes down. As soon as the pressure gets low, the volume goes back up. And as I was mentioning earlier, this port here is what acts on the bottom of this piston / wedge thingy. So, and this is oil pressure after the filter. So if your filter is brand new and very little restriction, essentially it would have more pressure than normal. But the fact that this port is going to after the filter, you have the same pressure coming out of the filter always, right? It's regulated by this piston and this spring and this pressure. So as your filter gets more clogged up at the end of a service interval, it still has the same oil pressure. It doesn't change with the filter restriction. So that's kind of a nice feature. It's super complicated what they had to do to make it happen, right? There's some drillings in the block, and there's this big cavity here, and at the bottom of this cavity there's a port that goes to this hole over here, and right, this hole goes down to, so this this cavity here, which is attached to this cavity, this drill hole here, goes to the bottom of that bore, and that intersects with this cross drilling, which goes down to here, and then they put a ball bearing in there to plug it up. So yeah, path is through here, through there, down there, and then down into this wedge piston thing. So that's the pressurized oil system. The non-pressurized part of the oil system is this G rotor, which that sits in there like that, and that like that, and spinny, spinny, pumpy, pumpy, right? Inlet here, outlet here, which this channel goes into this, which is this guy here. So anyway, that's how this thing works. Now that I have it all cleaned up, I can show you the damage, because it did most certainly ingest some debris. So I'm not sure how good the camera is going to do on focusing on that, but you can clearly see some very fine fragments of aluminum that got kind of smushed into this. But I'm just going to take some Scotch-Brite or maybe some 600 grit sandpaper and just sand that smooth again. Like I said, this pump does very little, right? It just pumps low pressure oil from the front sump to the rear sump. So it's not super critical. If it failed, nothing bad would happen, really. It would fill the front sump and cascade over, and eventually oil would get to the back. Don't do it, right? You can't just get rid of this and drive aggressively, because that won't work. But this isn't really a big failure mechanism if that pump fails, other than putting garbage into the motor, which of course we don't want to do, but not super critical. Then there's this pump, which I have all these labeled, so I put them back in the same spot. But essentially, this has some pretty big scratches in it, right? Don't think it's too critical, because there's not really a lot of relative motion here that does anything, right? This thing slides in and out on this, right? This thing basically just goes like that as it spins around. So as long as that kind of seals, this is basically just a paddle wheel. However, this thing did have dirt in it, so you notice that this one here slides in and out super easy. Well, and if I pick it up, that one stays and these ones don't. And that's because I already kind of polished this one up a little bit. Otherwise, these should all fall apart when I take it apart, but they don't because they have big, feel that? Hear that? They have big scratches in there. So I'm going to take a little jeweler's file and kind of file those scratches out of it. And then this pump will be perfectly usable. I'll hammer this back into place. Or these are pretty cheap. I think I found one on eBay for like 20 bucks, 18 bucks, something like that, plus shipping. So I might just buy a new one of them. They're pretty cheap. Probably very rarely these fail because, you know, it's only 13 pieces brazed together and stuff. So what could go wrong? But anyway, I think this is all going to be perfectly usable. I'll get this stuff filed up and stick it back together. Okay, so I got all the main pump stuff polished out and fixed up. So my next endeavor is to get these little itty bitty scratches out of here. And again, I don't really care if they're below the surface, right? I just don't want them sticking up so they make debris. So this one here, no dowel pins on it, so I can just take this on a granite table, put some sandpaper on it, go like that. So that's what I'm going to do in a little bit. This one has dowel pins in it, so I can't really do that unless I pull the dowel pins out, which, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to take a 123 block, which is super flat, and some sandpaper. This is 1200 grit, so really, really fine. And I'll put it on top of a 123 block. Some WD-40 on it. We'll do this guy first. This one's down in a hole, so it's going to be hard to see, but put a little lube on there. That's what it looks like after a Team Apathy surfacing job. Should be fine. Normally, like I said, I would put this on a granite plate, but I'm already set up here with the 123 block, so I might as well just get after it with this. All right, here we have it. You can still see them, but not going to hurt performance one bit. Okay, so that's what it looks like. You just take these to the solvent tank. Again, not solvent. And get them cleaned up, and then we'll assemble this guy. Well, actually not quite that fast. I still have to throw these over in the solvent tank. Piece of the puzzle, we got to clean this guy up. It's got the same problem. It's got little scratches in it here and there, and lots of little flakes of aluminum stuck to it. So I'm just going to do the same methodology. Maybe I'll use a sandpaper. Clean it up after I file all the little chips off of there. All right, and then same thing with this guy. Okay, so I got all the giblets cleaned up, rubbed on. Now it's time to put this beast back together. So I got this, well, it's got Mobile 1 in it, but it's just assembly lube. It has a nice little spigot on it. If you don't have one of these, you can just poke a hole with an awl through the top of it, or drill a hole, whatever, and then you just, anytime you're putting something together, slather some lube on it. It can't hurt. It's going to get full of oil anyway, so that's what I use. These are pretty nice. If you've built many motors in your time, you've probably used some sort of assembly lube which has this nice top on it. So, highly recommend that. And you're going to make a big mess on your table, but that's okay. So that, I've never assembled one of these before, but how hard could it be, right? And there's a whole bunch of pieces that get kind of assembled in situ, which I've never done. Pretty sure I can figure it out though. Some oil on the journal bearing up front here. I think you can see what I'm doing. Just smearing oil everywhere. Alright, so this is the piston. These pretty much have to go in together. Come on, baby. Alright. See that? Ooh, nice and smooth. Butter. Okay. Leave the inside of this. This is the vane pump. Well, in the olden days, vane pumps were really, really inefficient because the vanes actually were sliding on the outer surface. But this new modern version, it doesn't slide on it, it rotates on it, and then this journal bearing is sliding over here. So it's much better than the old-fashioned vane pumps, like a Judson supercharger, for instance. It was the old style vane pump. Okay, now this is the part that's going to be super fun because I got to get all those pieces into here without all the giblets falling out. Or they're numbered, so maybe I could just slide it together and then put the little giblets back in. That might be the easier way to do it. Yeah, you know, they all fall out now. Okay. So it's 5. I probably don't need to put these in any kind of order, but I am. Okay, so now that they're in order, I'm going to take them back apart anyway and kind of lube up the slidey thing. Just for initial startup. Make sure there's oil in there. I don't know if you ever noticed it, but as soon as you put these gloves on, you have an itchy nose. I don't think that's just me. I think that's universal. Could be wrong. My wife says I'm wrong all the time, so let's go with her. Let's go with her logic. Yeah, this feels buttery smooth now compared compared to before. Maybe. I'll drop that. All right. Okay, so the guy was really nice. He would take some acetone and wipe those numbers off of there because I don't need those anymore. Probably never did need them, but all right. Put a little more lube in there that I just wiped off because it can't hurt. Okay, now we do the inner rotor. Again, I'm gonna slather some lube in this thing. Get full of oil eventually, but itchy nose again. So this is the fun part. You got to get all these little doodads lined up. Did I, yeah, I did. Put this in upside down. Why'd you let me put it in upside down? So the reason I know it's in upside down is this 06 goes with that 06, like that, except for this shaft goes this way. So it's in upside down. So, see if I can't hold the majority of these doodads. Okay. Got all but one of them. Okay. Let's see if I can get all of them this time. Clever finger placement. Ta-da! Look at that. And then this has a little dot right here. And a little dot right there, so that's how you know where that lines up. Thanks for that, BMW, whoever makes this pump. Probably not BMW. There's probably a better way to do this. Maybe putting it together, dropping the whole thing in. I don't know. This is the way I'm doing it. Probably if I did it again, I would have a better strategy / process. All right, all's well that ends well. So that guy's in there now. Now I got to put this little spring in, which goes right here. So move that to its least compressed, which is all the way up. Probably a good way to do this. Don't know. Probably without gloves on is the best way. Oh yeah, got that on the dirty floor. Let me go wash this. Alright. Let me try this without gloves because dexterity goes down by a factor of 7 when you have gloves on. Okay, it's going to be fun. Like a Jesus clip, but different shape. Okay. Okay, got it in there. Lubricator lays everything good. This guy. This bearing. And this shaft sticks out of the bottom side, so I'm going to have to lift this thing up a little bit to put this cover on, which is no big deal. And we have it. A quarter of an assembled pump. Maybe half, I don't know. Something like that. Making gurgling noises like I like. A monkey fucking a football over here. Thanks for watching. If you like this content and want more, subscribe, like, and share.